Now, everybody knows about how change to a region's economic fortunes can have a devastating impact. We've seen it in places like Detroit, Cleveland, West Virginia, and Kentucky. They're talked about a lot and used as examples of former cities that have fallen from grace. A loss of industry can wipe out big cities or small towns. It does not discriminate. There's a place in the far southern edge of Illinois called Cairo that might be one of the most well-known examples of economic decline across the whole region. Cairo is a teeny little place way down where Illinois meets Missouri and Kentucky. I'd heard about how devastated this community was, how a loss of jobs and severe storms had pretty much wiped the place off the map. So I went there. It was a bright and sunny day in late November of 2021. As we'll see, there really isn't much left here. Many say Cairo is a sign of the times, of the future of small towns in this country that have relied on economies that no longer exist. You could call Cairo an industrial relic, a live look at a ghost town in progress. The exodus of small town folks is happening all over Illinois. It's not just in Cairo, but Cairo might be the most extreme version you'll ever see. Cairo is in Alexander County, Illinois, which used to have 20,000 people, and now there's 5,000 people here. In fact, this county lost a higher percentage of its population than any other county in the country. Cairo proper once had 15,000 people. Today, there's less than 2,000. Okay, so what happened here? Well, many factors are in play as to why Cairo is the way it is. It's located along the confluence between the Missouri and Ohio River, so this was a very important place for shipping and travel. The river ports here are where they would stop and load supplies. There was a lot of wealth here in the 1800s, as there were rich merchants and bankers and shippers and businessmen. They moved here from all over the place to take advantage of the prime location. There were once giant mansions here where millionaires lived. Believe it or don't, at one time in the mid-1800s, people thought Cairo should be the capital of the USA because it was so centrally located and vital for transportation and business. There was a lot of money and influence in Cairo. But then in the late 1800s, railroads became the main form of transportation, so shipping by river was less important. The railroads still went through Cairo, but over time their routes shifted away from this town. Then, over time, they built a series of bridges nearby, which meant transportation routes could bypass Cairo completely. That meant Cairo wasn't as important for trade. There was no reason to stop here anymore. A lot of the railroads were gone, and the shipping was gone, and with that, more problems snowballed. By the 1950s, the job losses in the area began to mount. Lots of the original shipping and railroad and ferry businesses were long gone, so people moved away. Then there were a bunch of riots in the 1900s. The black population here had grown very large, but wasn't represented in the city government. There was a lot of racism here, and a lot of tension, and a lot of black uprisings. Many black folks were lynched in public view. By the late 60s, all the riots here had destroyed many of the town's buildings, which were never rebuilt. So, even more people left. Hospitals began to close. Schools followed. A series of river floods also ruined a lot of the farmland and buildings and homes here. That added further decay to the town. As early as 1917, Cairo had the highest crime rate in the state. In the 1920s, there were periods when 15% of the total town's population was locked up in jail. That didn't help draw more people to the area. As time's gone on, this place has faced a growing number of socioeconomic challenges. The people here are very poor, and of course, there isn't much of a tax base to keep the place running properly. Last year, 22 kids graduated from the high school. There hasn't been a new private residence built in Cairo in more than 50 years. Housing projects were torn down because there wasn't money to keep them running. The last grocery store closed in 2015. There's houses in the area that sell for as little as $700. Can you imagine that? The violent crime in Cairo is 4 times higher than the national average, and people have a 1 in 31 chance of being the victim of an assault or rape or murder every year. Robberies and break-ins are 3 times higher than the U.S. average. 40% of the population that's left lives in poverty. Honestly, I don't know why people stay. The nearest place for work is Cape Girardeau, Missouri, or Paducah, Kentucky. There's really nothing going on. There's no future here. But I get it. People have family nearby or they love their community. For some people, you can't force them out of their homes, no matter what. I get that, and I'm sure you can empathize with people who want to stay in their homes. But for every person who dies or moves away, there's not a person to replace them. One day, this place won't be here at all. Right now, we're watching live another former great U.S. city fade away, 1 year at a time. We went to Cairo, which I have not even edited yet. And
Yeah.
I mean, we drove through it and saw it. A lot of Illinois has
A lot of
really,
Illinois gone. Well, Illinois is a really dysfunctional place,
yeah.
and it has been forever. And the southern part has always, so Danville's central more,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but there's kind of like Chicago, and then there's everything else, and then more or less there's a cultural line that right around I-64 that kind of divides it, and but
Mm-hmm.
it's partly geographical, it's partly climate. I mean, everything. Different people groups settled, so people look a little different. They sound a little different. You don't hear it so much like with me and my generation, but people like my parents' generation, they all still talk with a drawl. So
Mm-hmm.
they'd sound more like Kentucky than. And so that's a weird thing that's changed. People talk differently. I mean, really, we talk more kind of 6 o'clock news. And they, yeah, still kind of talk old ways. They have weird ways of saying some things. Um, and Cairo in particular was just, it's, there's no city like it. I mean, I'm a real geography buff. You'd be hard pressed to find a city with as messed up and interesting a history as Cairo. That's a place I was told by local, like people who lived close by, like you should never go there alone. And it's they were saying it's Mad Max. I visited Cairo at 11 o'clock at night, coming back from a trip, and it was fine. It was like that was so overblown.
Yeah,
And
it's not. We drove around, and it was a nice day. People were like cutting down trees, and I mean, it's clearly looks like it's been bombed out in a lot of it. There's some
yeah,
actually surprisingly nice little neighborhoods in Cairo
no,
that I was like,
yeah,
like who would still live here? I mean, it's really pretty around the nature wise, but like
huh,
I don't know what these people do. We were looking at our phones. We're like, how far would these people have to go for work, and where would they go? And I
yeah.
think we determined it was they'd have to work in like southern Missouri. There was like a town that wasn't that small.
Cape
Um,
Girardeau, probably.
yeah, I think
Cape
that was like
Girard.
the biggest city. And then
Yeah.
we're like, well, why, how? It was just fascinating. It's sad, but like I wanted to know all the answers. So
So my hometown El Dorado was another one that just like I don't think you could find a town that has declined more through the years. Where I mean, the turn of the 20th century, it was 3 or 4 times the size that it is now, and had everything. I
turn
mean,
of the century, like 21 years ago.
I'm sorry, 20th last century, turn of the
Okay.
last century.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
but it's declined since the 20. So when I left from high school, when I graduated, there were 6,000 people. Now there's under 4,500.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's continuing that decline, and just places are just shuttering up. And the weird thing about these small towns is, so you'll see mom and pop places close, but what goes in their place are banks. There's so many stinking banks in these little towns. It's like, who has money to
I
even,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, there'll be like a name. It'll be like Central Illinois Bank, and then there'll be like Illinois Bank and Trust, and then like just names of banks that you've never really heard of, but they look official. I agree. I
Right.
never really thought about that, but yeah, there are several small little banks in these places, and a couple hardware stores. There's always a Dollar General, always a Casey's.
You
Um,
see a lot of those, and it's an interesting question about like Dollar General stores and places like that. Like, are those good? It's like the Walmart question, how good are those places for local businesses, because they help people buy things cheaply, but what is it doing to other businesses? And of course, they never offer as much as the grocery stores that they're replacing, or the hardware stores that they're replacing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Everyone knocks Walmart for being the disruptor of the mom and pops, but I think Dollar General is probably having a bigger impact on small towns than Walmart because there's one in
Much
every.
bigger.
Yeah.
Oh, much bigger. And it's all over Kentucky. It's over eastern Kentucky. Southern Illinois, any of these, I'm sure it's in Danville, the same kind of thing. Well, there are other players. There are other players that are certainly coming out, and Dollar General stores exploded. They're all over the place. They've kind of not drawn that ire, and I think it's just lazy reporting. I mean, I think it's just we're only going to look at who's the biggest on paper and what have you. And
based off of the comments that I get from my videos, there's a lot of people in rural Illinois that know exactly what I'm talking about, and they see it. They see it happening, and obviously it's sad, and we wish it didn't happen, but that's what's happening there. And it shows in the U.S. Census.
When you show some of the rural Illinois towns you drive through, what kind of stuff do you hear in the comments from people who live there?
It's a mix. It's sad. It's not what it once used to be. It's not living up to its potential. And then I'll have other people that are just mad. Oh, you don't live here. You don't get to talk about my place like that. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, okay. I mean, the data is showing that your town is losing population. So, put on the rose-colored glasses.
I hope this place can improve. I'm pulling for these people.
That's the nicest thing you've said in a long time, Karen. Are you popping those CBD gummies again?
I just think these people deserve better.
Well said, Karen. Well said. Keep going straight. There's a lot of streets. We can just... messed up stuff like 34th, like on the way in. This actually doesn't look that bad. It's the only nice part of town. What street we're on. Yeah, I like the number. Oh, 21st. Just stay on this. This is better than yeah. Oh, 24th. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they're used to this. Can't see it, so okay, you can go right at the street and then we can be done. Hey everyone! So it's pretty clear by now that elected leaders aren't going to help you. If you don't like what you saw in this video, demanding change won't work. You're going to have to do it on your own. If you want to be safe and want your community to be a place where people want to live, you're going to have to clean the place up yourselves. You're going to have to work with your friends and neighbors to lower crime. Politicians clearly don't care as much anymore. It's up to us.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.
And are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. You can get my email in the description to find out how I can help you find your perfect relocation.